The locals called it Miron Road, a winding path through the forest that seemed to vanish into mist after dusk. No one used it after dark, not since the incident in '92 when a delivery driver was found mumbling nonsense, soaked in blood and rain, his eyes wide open but seeing nothing. He kept repeating, "They danced in the storm, they danced." Last week, I took that road. It was supposed to be a shortcut, just 12 kilometers through the woods to my cousin's village. The rain had just started, light but steady, tapping against my windshield like skeletal fingers. My phone had lost signal 20 minutes ago, and the GPS kept recalculating, confused. I should have turned back. I noticed the first sign when I saw an old, rusted street lamp flickering in the middle of nowhere. It didn't belong there. No houses, no poles nearby, just this one light buzzing and blinking like it was struggling to stay alive. Beneath it stood something. Or someone. A woman. Drenched, unmoving, her long hair plastered to her face. As I passed, she lifted her head, her eyes were white, glowing faintly, and her mouth twisted into a grin that made my stomach churn. I sped up. But that's when I saw them. At the next turn, in the clearing just ahead, a circle of women in tattered black robes, spinning, their soaked garments flapping wildly in the storm. They weren't dancing for joy. Their movements were chaotic, unnatural, as if the rain controlled them, not the other way around. The air grew heavy. The rain was now pounding like drums, deafening. And my headlights dimmed. Something was very wrong with this road. I slammed the brakes. The car screeched and skidded, coming to a halt just inches from the dancing figures. They didn't flinch. Their feet splashed in the muddy puddles, moving in perfect unison, as if guided by an ancient rhythm only they could hear. One of them turned her face toward me. Her eyes, they weren't just white. They were empty sockets, oozing rainwater as if her soul had melted away long ago. Her jaw slowly dropped open, too wide, dislocating with a wet crack. Then she screamed. Not a human scream. It was a shrill, guttural wail, like a dying animal mixed with static. It pierced my ears and shook my bones. The others joined in, their heads snapping back unnaturally as they howled into the storm. Panicking, I threw the car into reverse. The tires spun, splashing mud, but the car didn't move. It felt like the earth itself was holding me in place. I looked in the mirror. More figures were behind me, slowly approaching from the forest, their arms twitching with jerky movements like broken puppets. I fumbled for my phone again. Still no signal. My headlights began to flicker. The witch's circle parted slowly, and from its center a figure emerged, taller, older, draped in what looked like centuries-old funeral robes. Her hair was woven with bones and vines, and in her hand she held a crooked staff that crackled faintly with red lightning. She stepped forward, her voice carried by the storm. "You've crossed the boundary, child of the sun. And now, you dance with the damned." As her staff struck the wet ground, the circle of witches lunged forward, not at me, but around my car, encasing it in a spinning vortex of clawed hands, screaming faces, and thrashing hair. I was no longer just a witness. I was part of the ritual. The world outside my windshield twisted into a nightmare. The circle of witches spun faster, their forms blurring into streaks of shadow and water. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, heart pounding like a war drum. The engine died with a final sputter. The dashboard lights flickered, then blacked out. Then came the chanting. Low and ancient, the sound seeped through the windows like smoke. It wasn't in any language I recognized. Each syllable felt older than time, vibrating in my bones, infecting my thoughts. My vision blurred as dizziness crept in. I blinked, and suddenly the witches weren't outside the car anymore. They were inside. One sat in the passenger seat, grinning with cracked black teeth. Her skin was bloated, bluish, like a drowned corpse. Another crouched in the back seat, whispering curses in my ear. Her breath was like ice and rotting flowers. A third crawled across the windshield, upside down, her eyes locked onto mine, glowing red like burning coals in a furnace. I tried to scream but no sound came out. The leader, the tall witch with the staff, approached the hood. She traced a circle on the windshield with her nail. The glass melted where she touched, dripping like hot wax. As the circle completed, she raised both arms and bellowed into the storm. The wind stopped. The rain stopped. Time itself stopped. Within the circle, the witches began to sway again. But this time, I could feel my own body moving too. My fingers left the steering wheel on their own. My feet tapped rhythmically on the floor. They were controlling me. Through the open roof, the rain returned, but now it burned. It smelled like blood. I looked at my hands, they were steaming. The witch queen spoke once more. Dance, mortal, until the storm claims your soul. My body wasn't mine anymore. Muscles convulsed with each pulse of that eerie chant. I tried to resist, to fight the rhythm, but it was like my limbs had been stolen. My arms moved in circles, twitching unnaturally. My feet scraped across the wet floorboards as if guided by invisible puppet strings. My breath came in sharp gasps, every inhale tainted with the metallic scent of something ancient and wrong. Outside, the witches danced faster. Their movements defied logic, bodies bending backward, limbs dislocating with cracking sounds, faces twitching between grotesque smiles and silent screams. The rain fell in sheets again, but not from clouds. It was falling from the sky like blood weeping from invisible wounds. Each drop that touched the car sizzled, melting paint and metal alike. Inside the car, the temperature dropped. Frost coated the windows. My breath turned to mist. The witch in the passenger seat reached over, her hand ice cold, and touched my forehead. Visions exploded behind my eyes. I saw the road as it once was, a narrow village path where, centuries ago, women were dragged from their homes, accused of sorcery. They were tortured, burned alive, their ashes buried beneath the cobblestones. But they didn't die. Their hatred festered. Their spirits anchored to the road. Every year, during the stormiest monsoon night, they returned to dance, not for joy, but for vengeance. And those unfortunate enough to cross their path would become part of the ritual, bound forever to the rhythm of their rage. As the vision faded, I realized something worse. My reflection in the cracked rearview mirror was no longer mine. It was her, the witch, and she was smiling. My voice finally returned, but it wasn't mine anymore. "Let it rain," I whispered. "Let them rise." The rain stopped. Not gradually. It just ceased. The sky, still black as pitch, was suddenly silent. No thunder, no wind, no raindrops. An unnatural calm, like the world had stopped breathing. The witches froze mid-dance, their twisted forms outlined by the dull glow of moonlight breaking through the thick clouds. I opened the car door, not of my own will, but as if compelled by something older than instinct. My bare feet hit the soaked earth with a sickening squelch. The ground pulsed beneath me. The other cursed ones were already there, men and women like me, trapped in the bodies of the damned. We all took our places in the circle. The witches began to chant again, but this time it wasn't in tongues, it was in my voice, our voices. Their chant had become ours. They had passed the curse on. As we danced, the witches began to fade, dissolving into mist, into soil, into the stones of the road itself. One by one, their howls echoed, mournful and triumphant. We, the new cursed, were now the guardians of the road. Their vengeance was complete. Their rest, at last, earned. But there was no release for us. I felt my bones fuse with the earth, my heartbeat sinking with the rhythm of thunder returning in the distance. My body turned to shadow, to memory. I was no longer someone who had stumbled onto the haunted road. I was the road. And so, every rainy night, when lightning cracks across the sky, and the road glistens wet under the moon, we rise. We dance. Not for joy. Not even for vengeance. But because we can never stop. And if you're ever driving through that stretch at midnight, stop. Turn back. Because if you don't, you'll dance with us next.